What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you a look at Stygian Outer Gods, a sort of immersive sim/survival horror-esque Cthulhu mythos title that I'm bringing you a little bit ahead of its release into early access, which happens on the 14th, and that is because Fulcrum Publishing, the publisher for the game of course, reached out and asked if I was interested following my look at it during the Steam Next Fest that happened back in, I want to say February, and after spending some time with this one, I've got to say that I think it's pretty cool. So straight away, the name might sound a little bit familiar for the people who have constantly been asking me to check out Stygian Reign of the Old Ones forever, and that is because they are set in the same universe. In fact, Outer Gods here is supposed to at least reference and bring up some characters, so while I don't think they are directly connected, the Steam page does say it will offer some fresh perspectives on things that happened in that game. So in that sense, they're at least loosely connected. But to start at the beginning, this game does have a few different difficulty options for people who don't want to necessarily manage their sanity, on top of all the enemies you have to fight off, that kind of thing. In addition to the difficulty, there are a host of RPG elements that we'll get into momentarily. The story of Stygian Outer Gods here puts us in the role of Jack. Jack has to head to Kingsport following the death of his father because a woman from your past known as Victoria shows up on your doorstep explaining that actually your father is alive, and in the town of Kingsport, supposedly, but dark and mysterious things are happening there, so it's best to go prepared at the very least. And of course, in traveling to Kingsport and ultimately getting stranded there, we get embroiled in all sorts of cosmic horrors bound to drive a man insane. But while that is at least the plot of most Cthulhu mythos things, this game is actually doing a handful of other things that I thought were really interesting, in particular some more RPG elements. So right at the beginning, we have a set of options we can pick that will allow us to customize some of our stats, like more stamina, resistance to sanity loss, that kind of stuff. And some of that will also give you a leg up on things like lockpicking, speech, or say the occult. These are skills that we're going to have access to that we can use in various situations to either help us out in some way or simply give us other options, as each one can provide you access to things that you wouldn't have access to otherwise, like say being able to loot all these extra caches, find alternate routes through things, etc. But in addition to this, progression is also tied to these tarot cards you can find, seers and sinners as it's called, or essentially major and minor abilities. So the seer cards are huge abilities that will probably change the way you play in some form or fashion. So this game has some MSIM elements where we're going to be able to pick up and move a lot of stuff, and in this sense we can actually find creative ways around obstacles, and there are cards that will allow you to lift heavier and heavier objects, giving you access to different areas and whatnot. Or if you want to go a more stealth route, there's one that makes you walk silently, which I found particularly useful, especially in the early game before you get access to guns. Now, the Sinner cards are smaller things that can do things like increase your skill with, say, lockpicking, the occult, speech, etc. So all of that's well and good, but I think where this game probably shines the most is the exploration of the town itself, because at least the parts of the game that are available thus far, which is like 5 to 10 hours worth of gameplay at the moment, we have access to a bunch of choices as well as a whole host of exploration. So on the story side of things, you will be encountering certain situations that you can influence with your skills and abilities, like an early part of the game where you can choose to help or simply ignore or perhaps even kill a man who's dying as you enter the town of Kingsport, and then later on there's other decisions you can make as well. Now, outside of this, almost certainly leading to various endings that will be available in the final version, it's also going to affect how the game reacts to you as well. It's going to take these decisions that you're making alongside your actual chosen playstyle to then throw different enemies or events at you, at least according to the developers. Now, how that actually pans out and if that's a substantial difference, we'll have yet to see, but I thought it noteworthy that that's something they are trying to do here. Discounting that stuff, there's also a lot to just see and find as you move through the little village or the mines or the lighthouse or any other area you might be exploring, because while there are certainly eldritch horrors that you'll need to avoid, such as witches, these dogs that have certainly seen better days, there's also more disconcerting things that you can find. And in fact, if you dig deep enough, you might just find yourself grasping onto a little bit of eldritch power to use for yourself as well. There's also, of course, things like puzzles and side quests and stuff like that to get up to. In fact, if anything, I was surprised just how much of the village area was completely optional. There's a little bit you have to explore there, but there's a whole bunch of buildings that you can go into and find stuff, including little side events involving various characters you can find that, again, have nothing to do with anything you're actually required to do there. But probably the most disconcerting part about doing all that is the various people you can run into, some of which are clearly not human. Others are humans who have simply seen better days or are simply struggling to survive. Others may even be a little more helpful, taking on the role of a merchant as an example. So there's a lot going on here. It's got a lot of different elements to it that I enjoyed. But talking a little bit about the combat side of things, so this is where the game is a little bit rough, I would say. While there are a variety of ways to approach any given situation, where I would say is where the fun is, actually, but once it comes time to actually fight a monster, it's basically just melee mixed with block, unless you've got access to guns or throwables at that point. So you can't throw things at enemies, you can throw things to create distractions to just get around them instead. And you will eventually get access to guns, which are pretty handy at dealing with at least these introductory mobs. Where you're going to run into trouble, however, is when you are simply dealing with too many enemies for just you to take on, or you're already low on resources and health. Now, what you do have to watch out for while you partake in this combat is your sanity meter going down. The closer you are to enemies or just upsetting things, your sanity starts to decrease, which can lead to all sorts of other afflictions, so you've got to keep an eye on things like your health, your sanity, and this is where items like, say, sedatives or just straight up first aid kits come in, and there is some crafting available to help you deal with all this. And in combination with the various perks and stuff, I think you can find interesting ways to play the game, but this is definitely the part where the game feels very early access, and in combination with, I would say, a pretty prominent bit of micro-stuttering that I've experienced here, which you've probably no doubt seen in some of the footage up to this point, are where I would say this game has the most work to do. But with the developer planning roughly a year or so in early access, if they use that time to, of course, address those issues, but also simply flesh out and add some depth to these systems that are already here, then I think this will shape up to be something really cool, and will definitely be something I will be reviewing when it launches in full. Currently, they're hoping to have it out by early 2026, so it's going to be a little while. But in the meantime, if you want to take a look at it, it is launching for $20 on the 14th. But with all of that said, that's pretty much everything I've got to say on this one currently, so hopefully you enjoyed this look at Stygian Outer Gods. If you did, by all means, let me know how you feel about it down in the comment section below, which of course means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.